Good evening, everybody out there in digital world, and welcome to the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts, our brand new Salon series. We have an outstanding guest this evening and a wonderful conversation that we're going to get into in just a few moments here. I do want to send out some shout outs and some thank yous. First and foremost to the Friends of SCPA. That is our parent foundation. It is our foundation for our school site, and without them, we cannot do the things that we do at the San Diego School of Creative Performing Arts. So I just want to give them a huge shout out and a big thank you for helping to underwrite this important and valuable series. Tonight with me in the studio are a couple of guests that I want to introduce very quickly before we get to our main guests. They are Vice Principal of the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts. Actually, they're both Vice Principals. Dr. Christian Gordon and Miss Roxanne Hatfield. And I just want to welcome the two of you to tonight's conversation. We're going to get into it pretty quickly here, but I also want to now introduce our guest for the evening. This man is a very important figure in our community, especially during these times where we're seeing so much change and so much possibility with the future of the arts. Surrounding issues of BIPOC and inclusion. And this man leads a discussion that he has every single week with the San Diego Repertory Theater Company, along with La Jolla Playhouse and the Old Globe. He is in the development department at San Diego Rep, and we're just excited to have him here this evening, Mr. Ahmed Dents. Ahmed, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me, my friend. I appreciate it. I'm usually scheduling people and asking the questions, man. So the tables are turned on me tonight.
You know what? And we couldn't be happier about that, because the reality is that when you're doing it, you're talking about the issues that are current in the world of creative and performing arts, and you're talking about issues that are long overdue conversations surrounding accessibility and inclusion. And, we couldn't have a better guest here tonight. Our School of Creative and Performing Arts, we're working on a lot of those initiatives ourselves, especially coming out of these past summer months and moving into the fall, with so many different things to be considering and areas that need some focus. So tonight, Ahmed, we just want to get started with, having you go through your incredible personal journey. You have an incredible story to tell, and it has a lot to do with where you've ended up in your life. So I would love for you to just kind of share a little bit of that with our audience this evening.
Yeah, I've been here at the San Diego Rep now a total of what is this going on now? Close to 15 years. I started here in 2007. I left for 2 years, from 17 to 19, came back at the end of 19. But in total, I've been kind of in this performing arts world since, I didn't really realize it until this year, but I've been kind of in this performing arts world since I was in high school. My dad worked at San Diego. My dad just retired a couple of weeks ago from the Spreckles Theater just across the street here. And when I was in high school, sometimes for some extra bucks, he would, let me come down and work security and work a couple of shows. And I never really realized it, but that's kind of where I got my first experience as far as being in the crowd, in the lobby, seeing how people come in to the theater. It kind of started back then. I didn't realize that's what it was starting, but back then I was seeing touring, shows would come through and I would see things like The Wiz. I was backstage in the audience for jazz concerts and all types of, ballet and all types of different shows. And, I was in high school. I was really just more concerned about sports. I was just looking at it like, oh, I can make a couple extra bucks this weekend working downtown with my dad. And it was cool seeing people out in the town. And then as, my high school came to an end, the football and track dreams didn't work out the way I thought they would, as the case with a lot of young students in high school. They think they're going to catch that golden ticket to be that Division I star and go on to the NFL or NBA or WNBA. But we already know it's a 2% of go and 2% of that go and 2% of that go. So, that reality hit me. And so I end up going into still trying to do some junior college. Went into the Marine Corps Reserves, had a beautiful baby girl, my oldest daughter, Alicia. And, that was all right out of high school. And so I was trying to do the Marine Corps thing. I was trying to work. I was still trying to go to junior college. At that time, I was going to Mesa and City College, and I was still trying to play football and run track. I was trying to work, and I was still trying to run the street with my boys. So I was the epitome of doing too much in the early 90s. If that phrase was in the dictionary, there would be a picture of me in the early 90s doing too much. Like, that was me. And just burning like that led me to have to end up in the Department of Corrections for 6 years between 1996 and 2002. And when I came home, finally on parole in 2002, there was my foundation, my family still waiting for me. And my dad got me a job at the Spreckles Theater working maintenance. And that was my reintroduction into the performing arts world. And, from that job there, I get linked up with KFM, Smooth Jazz 98.1. I end up working there. And then I go from the Spreckles to here in 2007. And then that's how I end up in this family we're in right now.
Wow. Ahmed, first of all, I want to thank you for sharing your story, man. A lot of what you said really resonates with me, and there are lots of parallels between what you described in your life and my own life. But listen, I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges you've noticed for BIPOC professionals trying to break into the performing arts industry?
I think first, what I noticed when I like I said, at the Spreckles, I worked on the maintenance side. So I was taking care of seats, doing stuff backstage, taking care of the building. I was doing hardware stuff. When I came to the rep, I started doing ticketing, and that kind of moved me into an administrative role. And it was still all kind of new to me. For me, it was still a new industry I was moving into. I was still learning what it was. I didn't really know what this thing was. I know I worked in theater and I was learning. But then finally, when I was working ticketing and I had to go to a national, we had to go to a national conference. The first one I went to was here in San Diego. Okay. And this was primarily for like administrators. So it was mainly for development people or ticketing people who worked in the box office. It was for software. It was for the front end of the theater, of the house. And out of a conference of like 1,300 people, I literally could count 5 black people. I knew all the black people who were at the conference. This is it's a national conference. And I could count all the black people on my one hand that were there for the conference. 2 of them were here from San Diego. Me and Nikki were both here from San Diego, And so that was my first peek into understanding, like, wow, okay, this is really strange. There's nobody here in this space. Like, this is really odd. And then so for that aspect of me, I started realizing that this was just a space that we just weren't geared to or weren't familiar with. That, it was just this administrative space in theater. Obviously, there was no type of real like pipeline that was coming into this. Like I'm dealing with theaters from all across the country. And so I'm going like, okay, so why am I one of the few in this space? And then so as that progressed, then I started seeing, as I started paying more attention to what was happening on stage and how shows came through, and I started working with more black artists and black writers, and even Latino and Asian writers, and seeing how these shows were starting to come through and how we would sell them and who we would sell them to and what the audiences were like and what was the difference between when different producers would come in. That's when I started, it all started coming together, which was always in my life anyway. This thing of representation started hitting me like, oh, wait a minute. Something's not right here. The stories are not being told right. The people working are not in a good ratio. And so I think from from my aspect, where I come from, like I said, where I come from, the administrative side, the ticketing side, the software side, the IT side, for me, it was just people didn't know Black people did these jobs in the performing arts, and we didn't tell ourselves we did these jobs.
Right.
Like, I didn't know anybody else besides meeting Nikki and the few that did this. Like, I didn't know anybody. I had never seen anybody like this. I knew some traveling shows from the Spreckles. I knew guys who were producers and things, but as far as someone working in, this was foreign to me. Like, this was like, oh, I've never known anybody like this. I would never have anybody to have gone to think this was a career path for me.
Right.
You know, there are plenty of other things I would have seen that in, but I would have never seen it in administrative and theater. There was no other Black person who I saw in my life who came down this route. Mm-hmm. You know, and so therefore I came to understand, like, okay, number one, this is just something we don't know we can do. And obviously it's, whether it's on purpose or not, it's some kind of a club that keeps the same type of people coming through it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's when I realized it's both of those things. We don't know it, and it keeps funneling the same type of people through it.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's where my eyes started opening to. Every year, the more I worked in it, I have to let more young people know this is a route they can go.
Wow, man, I got to say that you're illuminating some really key and important connections for people in regards to this bigger picture, this giant holistic thing. When you're saying that, you know, working at a place like the Spreckles, that the marketing literature that was coming through, the marketing materials that are coming through, the messaging that was coming through and going out, and the target audience, you never felt an inclusionary component to any of those pieces.
I recognize, especially then when I was working, because then that was more of like, you know, it's a rental theater. So, and during that time in the early 2000s, like, Spreckles was rocking almost every night. Like, everything was coming through the Spreckles. Like I said, from Dave Koz to Dave Chappelle, like everything was coming through the Spreckles. So I was making a lot of good money overtime back then. But that's what led me to understand the difference between promoters, the difference between how different promoters and different shows were treated, the expectation of different tours coming through, and what were the preconceived notion from management in expecting those people. So whether they knew it or not, I can tell when management had a different attitude towards somebody that was getting ready to come in 2 weeks versus someone who's getting ready to come in a week before that. And that in itself set a tone for how things were going to happen during that week, because there might have already been some type of unseen animosity towards this group of people that's coming in, because you're not culturally aware of how to deal with them. So things get perceived the wrong way. Things that are not slights get taken as slights, or maybe you're not aware of how to deal with them. You're more aware of how to deal with these people, and you've had this relationship. So you're a little more courteous to them. You're a little more professional with them than you are with this group, you know, and all that counts to young people in that experience, seeing how professionals are supposed to deal with one another. You know, all that counts to make a person want to aspire to do that, or if that's someplace they should go, or I don't know, they treat us like that's someplace we're not supposed to be. So maybe we're not supposed to be there. Maybe we're just outliers. And, you know, all that comes into account.
Thank you. In listening to what you were saying, and, you know, there's always that cultural piece that goes into the theater. Or do people understand? Do people know? How have the events over the past summer influenced or impacted the industry? And how do you feel that the industry needs to respond to differences in culture and helping all cultures come together to understand and appreciate theater, because it's an expression of all of us at the end of the day? Yeah,
I think, you know, like the conversations we have when we are listening, these are conversations that have always taken place, as far as, you know, things of issues of representation, authenticity, you know, equity. And I think with this past summer, I think it was twofold. It was number one, the COVID lockdown and the economic downturn due to COVID, as far as how many millions of people lost their jobs. That number one served as a big equalizer and eye opener for people, because now there was a lot of people who had good, stable jobs who were in positions that they usually look down on other people upon, and didn't. Now they have to learn how to deal with the unemployment system. Now they have to learn how to deal with the county when it comes to food stamps. Now they have to learn how to deal with all these things. And so now that becomes now there's a little more empathy floating around, because now you get what other folks have been dealing with. But then came, of course, the string of deaths that led up to George Floyd, which was basically, the match that really set the kindle on fire. And so, when that happened, it just sparked a whole new wave of, of course, it was the first focus on Black Lives Matter, but it sparked a whole new wave on what representation was. It sparked a whole new wave of people really being tired of our stories being told by somebody else, or not told the correct way, or being halfway consulted on the story, because we're just tired. We're like, okay, we watched this brother get choked out for almost 10 minutes. And that was just, these were, like I said, these were already things we were dealing with. But now once we saw this type of death and we saw this, we were just like, like I said, it was just a tinderbox. And this is like, we're done. Like we're done. We're just done. We need people to see who we are in the real light. And the political conversations that came from it, still to this day, we need to understand that we're not a monolith. We inhabit every part of this society, just like you. We all don't think the same. Like, yeah, everybody in my family is Black, but we don't all think the same on these issues. So it makes you think we all in the neighborhood think the same, or we all in the city think the same, or we come from the same background. Some of us have had money since slavery days. Some of our families have been rich since the days of slavery. So some of us are Black, and we have that sense of entitlement. We got that because we've had generational money. Others have not. So we're all so different. And I think came this common call to be able to express that difference, to stop being shown in this only one light, or to stop, even if there is a diversity of trying to show how we live, to stop letting it be completely shown through the lens of white eyes or a European educational standpoint. I think it just finally just became like, I think the organizations called for it themselves. I think when everybody started putting their statements out to show solidarity, people were like, okay, we're going to hold you to that then. Since you want to come out and start talking, no one asked you to, but since you did, and since you're saying it's important to you, we're going to see. We're going to see if it's important to you. You saying you could come through the door. Okay, well, here we come. Let's see if you really want to know what we're about. Let's see if you really want to hear our ideas. Let's see if you really want to see what the representation of us is about. And I think that this summer I think, like I said, there were already things building upon it coming into 2020. But I think the combination of those things, just everybody was just like, well, let's just rumble now. Let's just get it on now and take the step now. Everything's already bad. Let's just go ahead and push all the chips in now. Let's get it done.
No doubt.
What you're doing though is you're illuminating, even to me. I feel like somebody who's in the know in the world of the performing arts, and right now you have just in the most beautiful way made me feel like a child. And I'll tell you why, man. I'll tell you why, because Latinos, we go through a lot of stuff, that we could say is very similar, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of the inclusionary conversation. Yeah. But you just illuminated something to me that is something I've never even really understood myself. And that is when it comes to the infrastructure, the business side, the front of house components, the welcoming pillar, as our boss would say, the welcoming pillar has never really been there for BIPOC. It has been an elitist sort of audience, or a myopic maybe perspective on who we believe our audience is, right? And that just makes me feel, as an artistic director of a public art school, makes me feel like I still have a lot of work to do and a lot of things to learn. because we're having some of those issues too. When we look at us as a school site, we want to make sure that all of our students are feeling welcomed and that all of our students are part of our journey at a school like the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts. And yet there are times that our students are very vocal that they don't feel that way. Right. Yeah. And, Dr. G, Ms. Hatfield, I know you guys can vouch for this, man. So what do we do collectively then as a group? Where do we start with the notion of we're going to build a pipeline? We're going to be intentional about making sure that all students, all young people who are interested in pursuing something that should be available to anyone and everyone, how do we begin making sure that we're going to hold ourselves accountable, but also begin to implement those ideas, those pieces of accountability?
Well, I think number one, I know for sure for number one, it begins with the individual themselves. Like I know, through everything that's been happening this summer, I've been really taking a lot of time to analyze myself, myself as a person, as a man, as a father, as just a human being. I see a lot of stuff that I don't like. So right now I'm trying to identify it in myself first and then be able to deal with it externally. I think, when it comes to the pipeline, like I said, for me, when I first realized, especially in this administrative space, that there wasn't much here, like I said, the first thing I thought of was like, well, I don't know anybody else who does this. So, for me, it became a thing of, okay, well, number one, let's make sure you can try to do this the best way possible so that younger people see that this is an option, so that younger people who look like you see you in this space. And when they talk to you, they know that, yeah, I deal with software, I deal with the back end, I deal with IT, I can sell you tickets. Like, let's make sure that you are worthy enough to let somebody else know that they can do and inhabit the space that you inhabit. And then I think the second thing is doing things like we're doing right now, is having these conversations so that people can understand this. And then the other part, which is not always so easy, the other part is that the organizations that you work at, to, as much as you can, be respectfully honest and open about that these are things that need to change, that we need to find ways to open these avenues. And I don't want people to confuse anything. We're not talking about handouts. What my main focus through this whole summer so far, and all these discussions of equity and inclusion, my main goal has been to figure out how to get younger people to come work in the theater and get paid. Not to give anybody anything, to how do we get younger people to come in and learn these skills? Like, how do I understand internships have their place, but we need to start opening some doors to employment opportunities for young people to come in and be ushers, to come in and work behind concession stands. If they can go stand behind the counter at McDonald's, they can come stand at the door and scan tickets. If they can work at a movie theater and fill a popcorn bucket, they can guide somebody to their seat. And in the world that we work in, the difference is that in the theater performing arts, not only will they learn that, they'll learn decorum. They'll learn how to deal with people on a different financial level. They'll learn how to be that person. Like, you're not just asking somebody if they want some extra salt or something. You're actually having a conversation with somebody. You're having an interaction. You're being gracious. You're learning how to deal with people. You're learning how to usher people into a different place. You're learning how to deal with professionals on different levels. And then you're seeing within the performing arts the diversity of things that take place. So while that young person that's coming in to usher, he's also seeing lighting designers. They're also seeing directors. They're also seeing performers. They're also seeing the people who work up in the box office. They're also seeing, they're seeing all these other things. And so my main thing has been this summer is like, how do we open the door to get people to come in and work? And not just anybody, people who want to come in and do this, people who see the performing arts as that might be something I can do. How do we open the doors to get them in here? Because everybody can't afford to do an internship. And so I would like, if possible, if there's a kid who wants to be in the performing arts and he has a chance of having a part-time job working at a theater, ushering or doing something, and he can angle on that more than he can angle going to work at Starbucks. Nothing wrong with working at Starbucks, but what I'm saying is, if there's an open door where we can get that person into this industry at a young age, at a reasonable rate, we should always look at that, because we do work in the industry that it's usually the people who can afford to take an internship who get the leg up. And so those people come in, but everybody, there's a lot of other people who are just as passionate but don't have the time or the ability to do it with the internship.
You just described something, though, that would really be a beacon for change, and that is if you kind of blew up the current infrastructure of what front of house looks like at theaters across the country, and that you did create this opportunity, like you so eloquently explained, creating the opportunity for young people to come in and engage, maybe earn a couple of bucks along the way, and be introduced to so much around them. The analogy that you created, that you just spoke of, kids selling popcorn at a movie theater. I know that my kid was recently looking at a job, like that. And when you think about, I would never have thought about it in a million years, that he might want to do the same thing, but at a performing arts complex. But where are the opportunities?
Yeah. And I don't want to knock anybody for their job. Look, my first job, I was 15 years old. I worked at Mandarin Garden Chinese Cuisine at the Mary Mason Mall. I worked more. I don't even think I was legal to work then. I don't even know if it was legal to work, but I worked so many jobs. So I'm not knocking anybody for doing the jobs that they do. But if there are opportunities for people to come in and do what would amount to be the same type of work for around the same amount of pay in the performing arts field and learn so many more transferable social skills, I'd rather them have the chance to do that as well.
Dr. G, Ms. Hatfield, you guys know, we have a course called Arts Management at SCPA. And the idea is that our students learn the front of house business protocols. Those are our students who end up becoming our student ushers, our greeters at the door. They take the tickets. They do all of those kinds of things. I'm just wondering out loud right now, because I've got the VPs here with me, man, what if we somehow created with some of our local agencies that connection where the students are already learning, they're front loading the skill set, and now they can take it and put it into a practical setting where, maybe it's an internship, maybe it's beyond an internship, or maybe it's outside of SCPA. But when you have a group of young people who've already learned how to do a lot of those things, where's the opportunity to practice it other than at their own school site? Outside of it, where's the opportunity?
And I was thinking the same thing, Richard. How do we create those opportunities for students so that they can get connected into that? Do we create internships and we create those relationships with the different theaters? How do we get the kids connected? We used to do summer programs with the rep, and now we're in a situation where we can't necessarily do that, but looking towards the future, how do we reconnect? How do we get our kids to see, you just don't have to be on the stage to be a part of something beautiful, something amazing, that even, being an usher is just as powerful. You're inviting somebody into something that is amazing. So how do we connect those kids?
Well, you know what? This is a beautiful conversation, and I think that this is a good first step. But Ahmad, I want to shift gears a little bit and have you speak to our audience about some very important work that you're doing around San Diego, specifically your project, We Are Listening. Can you share with our audience what's its purpose, and just give us a little bit of background about We Are Listening?
Sure. So with the events this summer, this project was the brainchild of Sam Woodhouse, artistic director here at San Diego Repertory Theater. And, I have a background, like I said, I have a background in radio, podcasting, and I'm known to be one around work who doesn't shut up about stuff. Pretty much everybody knows me. If you catch me on the street or you catch me at the rep, I'm the same dude. I'm gonna tell you what's on my mind.
Yeah, if you're anywhere near the Lyceum, you know who Ahmed is.
And so, Sam had talked to Kim, our casting director, and she gave me a call and she told me this idea that Sam had about doing, some type of online salon, and he wanted to, create this forum for Black theater professionals, artists to, be able to candidly express what's on their mind about the industry, or be able to candidly express their frustrations about where they've been, what they've seen, and where it can go. And, I told Kim, I said, hey, I'll do it. My first two conditions for doing it is, number one, I want to know why we're doing it. Is it authentic? And is there going to be something actionable that comes from it? I just wanted to make sure there was no censorship on the part of the guests that come in. That's how I do podcasts. That's how I have conversations. I didn't want there to be any censorship. Like, if you really want to hear what we're thinking, then you really want to hear what we're thinking. We're not. We already water it down when we at work. We already have these discussions over in the corner and opening night, and over in the green room, and out here
don't do that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Drinks after the show. We already have these discussions, so you're not doing nothing new by asking us to come discuss this with gloves on. Like, if you want
water cooler,
if you want a straight no chaser, I'll make sure you get it straight no chaser. And he was like, it's all good. And Larry Aldridge, our managing director, was like, no, it's all good. That's what I want. Let's do it. And we did the first episode, and I hope I remember everybody who was on that first episode. I know it was Jacole Kitchen from the Playhouse, TJ Antonio Johnson, Yolanda Franklin of Common Ground Theater. There was Michael Taylor, board member at the Old Globe and founder and host of the Theater Corner. We had Dahan Blevins from Urban Warriors and Delicia Turner Sonnenberg. So that was our first group, and anybody's watching and knows any of those names, there was no filter in that conversation.
No, that's a powerful
not everybody
group,
on one call at one time.
Yeah,
There's not going to be any filter there. And so we had the conversation for about an hour, man, and it was just it was really powerful. It was really authentic. A lot of knowledge came from it, and we had a lot of people who watched and were interested. And we decided, okay, well, let's try to make it a series. And then our second episode was Monique Gaffney, and she came on and just gave a thorough, just clinic on the history of theater and Black theater, and talking about her dad, and talking about, seeing James Baldwin come and sit in her living room and just discuss the whole history of Black theater and what the essence of this thing was and what the industry was missing. And from that on, man, we've had Thomas Jones, we've had Sheldon Epps, Mika Wiltz, we've had a lot of great guests, and we continue moving forward. And it's become in one part, it's become very therapeutic. It's become very therapeutic for the actors and the professionals who've been on these talks, because we are having these, very candid and open conversations with a very open audience. It has led to some actionable items. It's led to a lot of talk amongst a lot of theaters about the issue we talked about as far as internships and bringing people on an entry level. And it spurred a lot of interest and conversation in the theater community in general, from board members to donors to other artistic directors. It's caught a national audience. So, and like I said, it's 120% real. There's nothing being filtered or faked out. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's kind of caught fire, and it's become, I think I got an email from Rebecca from TRG, and they're using a couple of the episodes for their EDI training, so it's become a really great conversation, and I'm glad to be able to be a part of it.
Man, I can imagine just the dispelling of some of the myths that are out there. Some of the names that you were talking about, Dahan Blevins, Delicia, Turner Sonnenberg, Sheldon Epps.
Mm-hmm.
These in at least in two of their cases, these are founders of arts organizations, right?
Yes.
And then you've got Sheldon Epps, who was running probably one of the most recognized regional theaters in the Los Angeles area, Pasadena Playhouse.
Yeah.
So it's not about exclusivity when it comes to their leadership either,
No.
right?
No. Not at
And
all.
and when listening to their perspective, can you illuminate on any of their perspective from where they're coming from? You know, these folks that they're already coming with an inclusionary mindset, man.
Yeah.
It's not about, you know, and I don't want to dismiss, but it's not like August Wilson, where August came out and said, no, black should stay with black and we should do black things. That's it, period. Which he had a right to say, and he wasn't wrong. But these other three people that you had on your show, these are people who epitomize inclusionary.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
was there anything that kind of resonated in a way that you think might really make people create more actionable items?
Yes, because I think exactly what you're saying is that with all of the guests we've had, it's dispelled the monolith in thought.
Mm.
Like when we did our first episode, you know, Bill Wright, the writer Bill Wright, was on our Facebook page, and he was like, "I don't agree with that. Like, I don't believe we should do that. We should start our own." And my reply to him was like, "Okay, come on the show and talk about it." You know what I mean? And then he came on with Ebony Muse, and we talked about it. And so, you know, even when, you know, speaking with Thomas Jones, you know, I understand that, you know, BIPOC is a new phrase, but for me and him, we both had the conversation that like we still haven't figured out how to jump on that. That's new to us, but we're on this talk speaking about that we both don't know how to jump on that. That's a foreign term to us. We still haven't gotten used to figuring out what that even means yet, you know. But that's the point. That doesn't stop all of us from doing the work together. We understand it doesn't. At the end of the day, the terms don't mean anything. At the end of the day, is are we creating an equitable space? And people need to understand what equity means. We're just talking about representation. And so these conversations have spurred the understanding of now what people are understanding about representation. Oh, these black folks come from everywhere. They come from every angle. They come from every type of past of education. They come from every type of financial background. They come from every region of the country. Oh, they don't all talk the same, and they don't all know the same music, and they don't all know the same this and that, and they're just like us, and they have this wide breadth of experiences, and that's what they're talking about. It's like, hey, stop putting us in these boxes you're putting us in a stage. We got so many more stories that y'all don't even know about. And so that's the common thread that comes from We Are Listening, because I don't know if I'm sure there are, but I don't know if there's any other platform right now where you're getting these calibers of theater professionals talking so honestly from the heart.
Yeah.
And like I would like, and I point this to one of the main things that I'll never forget for the rest of my life and anything I do in broadcasting, to be talking to me and Jacole talking to Sheldon Epps. And, you know, Jacole asked him about his background. And when he just spits out, well, hey, I'm just a kid from Compton, I wouldn't have heard that nowhere else in reference to or from Sheldon Epps. You know what I'm saying? This is a guy who people look at. He's very professional, erudite, very, you know, and like for him to just drop that, well, hey, I started off, I'm just a kid from Compton, and I went and moved here. And I was just, that just added another dimension to what I knew about him, to actually hear it roll off his tongue like that. You know, and for me, what that gave anybody who was listening, because, you know, we put people on mountaintops. We all do it. We have people that we've seen through our career, and we've put them in a place to where they're up here, and we kind of make this untouchable space between us and them. But when I hear Sheldon Epps just drop, I'm just a kid from Compton, everybody can relate this, because everybody knows they just a kid from somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And so you hear him saying like, oh, man, I'm just a kid from Compton. That's where I started at, and I went from here. And now for me, things like that erase the excuses. They erase the excuses. Because now you know, oh, he started off in Compton too. You know?
Wow. You know, in saying what you just said is very powerful, that we all start somewhere. what should we be telling our students? What should we be saying to them? What should we be sharing with our young people so that they realize that it's not impossible? It's actually very possible if they just put their minds to it. Or how can we encourage them?
I think the thing to communicate to the youngsters is the number one, let them be them. Let them figure out who they are. That's hard for us as parents sometimes. But you know, I just feel like we're in this age where it's just anything goes and everything can be seen everywhere. And you know, we have to try to find a space to where we leave our kids be open with us, even though we have to discipline them and guide them the right way. I think we have to find a way to provide some open space for them to be able to come to us with any type of problem they have. So I think number one is letting them be them, but also I think it is instilling them that you can do anything in what is the realistic sense. In other words, you know, whatever your interests are, whatever you think you're prone to, whatever talents you have, keep developing those to the best of your ability, and always just look for the open space, because there's something out there for what you love to do. If you really want to do it, even if you got to go to work, if you got to go do this, if you really want to do it, find the time to keep developing it. And now that we live in the information age, you can find out how to do almost anything that you want to do on YouTube. Like, you want a podcast, you go on YouTube and learn the podcast. You want to code, right, you can get on YouTube and learn how to code. If you know, and you can catch up with the paperwork later, but you can learn how to do it. You know what I mean? And so I think it becomes a combination of everything. Like I said, of us being examples and being able to stand in places where they can see there's someone who looks like them, and then being able to tell them that they can do it. And it, you know, I've over the last few years, I've been more publicly vocal about my story, because I take it upon myself to try to let people know they can overcome anything. So you know, if they come, because they do, I will take the knocks for my personal story if it can tell some other young people or someone else in my spot that they can overcome that situation. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. It'll be hard. It'll take some work. It'll take some discipline. You might have to let some people go, but you can overcome whatever it was that held you back, or whatever that moment is you're ashamed of, or whatever that period of life that was difficult for you and maybe put you a couple of steps behind. You can catch up, and you can carve out your own lane, and you can still blaze a path. It's just going to take some work. And I think that's the main thing to tell kids, is be realistic, is that, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but it's going to take your dedication and your work. So make sure that's what you want to do. And if you're doing anything else in between that time, try to be the best of that, because you never know when that skill will fit in down the road on your way to doing what you want to do. You might think you're wasting your time learning. I don't want to do. Why am I doing this? This is never going to help me. But you never know. 10 years down the road, you might be somewhere, and that thing that you know might be the thing that saves the company that day, or it might be the thing that gets you a promotion that day, or it might be you don't know. So whatever you're doing right now till you get there, become the master of it, because it could help you out down the road. I know I don't want to do no drywalling. I don't feel like doing drywalling. I don't feel like doing irrigation these days. But if times get hard, trust me, I'll come up with
do what you gotta do.
Yeah. No. Hey, I have a question for you, but before I ask you the question, I have to share something with you.
For sure.
Thing that you just said, because you were talking about putting your mind to it, and if you really want to do it, you can go to YouTube and you can find it. And you know, my son is 20 years old, and he was a theater major in high school. He got out, and he became really passionate about photography. So he told me one day, Dad, that's what I really want to do. And my whole thing, having the experience of working at a performing arts school, was, well, why don't you go to school to learn the art of photography? And he was like, well, no, Dad, see, I can go on YouTube and I can learn everything. So he just texted me while you were talking because you overheard me.
Yeah.
But listen, here's the question I want to ask you, because our district and our school is really starting to dive deeply into this whole notion of anti-racism and anti-Black racism and oppression, and really starting to look at how it affects our kids. When you were in high school, and you had, I'm sure, like myself and everyone else, Mrs. Hatfield and Richard, you probably had teachers that really, you could tell that they were on your side, and maybe you had a few that never took the time to even get to know you, and thus didn't know your story, didn't necessarily know how they could assist you on your journey to become whatever it was that you wanted to become. What would you say to those teachers today?
I was really lucky growing up in Mira Mesa. I went to a really San Diego Unified, especially in that part of town in Mira Mesa. The school district was really good, and I'm really lucky. I got caught up with a really good batch of teachers, especially when I got into high school. When I got into high school, I got with a really good batch of teachers that cared, and a lot of them taught outside the box. Like I remember Mr. Parent. He was always we took permission slips home every week because he was going to show us a movie that wasn't on the curriculum. You know what I mean? Because he was going to be like, look, these books I gave you, like these books they gave me to teach you, that's not going to teach you history. I'll teach you some history, but your parents got to sign this so you can watch the movie. There was Mrs. Graham Casso, who was, she was part of the pilot of the AVID program. And,
wow.
I was one of the first kids who went into the AVID program. And, and there we were, kids who they knew were smart and tested high, but just for some reason the work didn't translate in class. And that was me. I was bored in class. I didn't feel like being in class. I'll take the test, I'll get an A, but I don't want to do any homework. Okay. And so, I was in AVID, and that was a class that took us and taught us how to take college style notes from the 10th grade on, and I still take notes in that fashion to this day. Like I still take notes in the AVID style that they taught us. You know what I mean? Mrs. Duchok, who was my advanced American history and economics teacher, like really taking us to the side and really showing us what was happening with the different kingdoms and governments in the Middle East, and really taking us through these cultures to show us what it was. Right. I would say, to any teachers who didn't get me, I might halfway understand, because I was a class clown. The younger I was a class clown. Like I was in junior high school, I was a class clown. I was always up to something. But I would say for them to just do their best to try to have a empathetic soul, and just try as much as they can to remember themselves when they were the age of their students. Just try to remember themselves what they were when they were those students' ages, and just really try to understand that, like, you don't know what these kids are going to be. You have no idea. There's no way you can know. But it's going to be upon you to sleep at night knowing you did the best you could to put the best fertilizer in that garden.
There it is.
That might cause you to have to let your little preconceived notions and anger go by the wayside, or whatever it is. But, you're whatever those kids become, you're going to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there are some flowers and vines that are more stubborn than other ones, but they're still in your garden. And you still got to figure out a way to make it grow if you want your garden to be right. You know what I mean? And so I just would encourage them as much as possible. And I know it's hard. I'm a parent. I know kids get on your nerves. I get it. But I wore my parents out. But I think that's that's what I try to deal with in myself and dealing with my kids. Is that okay, dude? You got to remember when you were 5. You got to remember when you were this. You got to remember when your first day of school. You got to remember how the world looked to you and you didn't understand. Like, you got to remember that. And so I think that's the main thing, is just try to get them to understand, like, hey, just do the best you can to put the best fertilizer in the garden, and and you did your part.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay.
Man, you are such an incredible example of kicking in the door. You found ways to get inside a room and learn, whatever that room was.
I get in and learn. If there's something to learn, I'll get in there.
That is phenomenal. That kind of drive is phenomenal. Did you always have that, Ahmed? Was that always part of you?
I've always wanted to know how things work. Like, I've always wanted to know, like, kids have no idea what it is now. But when I was a kid, my dad, they're still in my dad's garage to this day. When I was a kid, my dad had these giant volumes, man, of like Encyclopedia Britannica, and then he had another volume that was this white volume of books called, literally was just called Books of Knowledge. That was the brand name of the book. And then I can't remember the other ones. Well, there was another green volume like that. And there was this huge bookcase that sat in our hallway, and it was 3 levels, and there was each volume on each level. And there would be days when I was done playing with my toys, man, I would just lay on the floor and I would just open those books and I would just go through. Like, I'd just pick a letter, and I'd open the book and I would just go through it. And that's how I learned, that's how I learned, probably like at a real early age. I was like, back, this is a buzzword now. I was learning back then that Kuwait, all their citizens have free healthcare. That was like, I was a kid, like, reading up on that. You know what I mean? Like, that's how far about, like, that I was looking at stuff like that then. So I just wanted to know how things worked. I wanted to know I wanted to know how people in different parts of the world worked. I wanted to know what type of things different people did, and then I go in the garage and tear up all of the stereos and stuff too. I tear up everything. But I really was always curious. I think that's when I was like, that always spur kids' curiosity. Do whatever you can to keep them curious about the world. I was just always very curious about how things work. And so whenever I got a book, if I did have a book, I would be the person who would read those extra pages that nobody else read. Like, I wanted to know, like, I would try to figure out what all this other stuff meant too. So I was always very curious. And, even when I got locked up, that was still, I learned so many things in there. Like, I tried to keep myself current. I sought out every book I could find. I sought out every up-to-date periodical I could find, so I'm always curious to know how things work. I kind of don't want to be in the dark if something goes wrong, so I want to kind of know how to fix it myself. I just have a natural curiosity, and I'm naturally competitive. I don't like life to beat me. I don't like to lose at life. I don't like to let situations beat me. I really don't like being in a bad situation and then think, oh, this is going to keep me down the rest of my life. I'm just really competitive against life like that.
Man, I know a lot of kids feel sometimes like there's a wall in front of them or the door listening. And oftentimes with a young person, the reaction can be to withdraw completely or to lash out, right? Anger comes through. What do you say to young people today who are experiencing that door being shut, who are experiencing that wall being up, and are trying to work through whether to get angry or to disappear? What do you say to a kid like that?
I would say, number one, I feel them, because I've been all that. Like, I've dealt with like really heavy depression since I was a kid, so I completely understand that. I completely understand that wanting to withdraw. Like, anyone who knows me personally will tell you, like, oh yeah, that dude that dude will fold into a cave on you. Like, like he'll go to his own place for a minute. You know what I mean? Like, Ahmed is fine, but he's got his own place that he likes to go to in his mind at times. You're gonna have to wait for him to come out when he's ready. You know, I would say to any young people who are listening to feel like that, if you can, find anyone you can talk to. I don't care who they are, as long as they're not going to do you harm. Find anyone you can talk to, even if it's someone who's on your bus route and for some reason you can have a good conversation with them. Talk to them. Find someone to talk to. Write. I don't care if you've never written before. I don't care if you don't know what to write. Get a pad that's going to be only yours and you know where it's going to be at, and just put a pen to the paper and just write. I don't care if you start off, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. Just start writing. And trust me, something will start coming out if you keep writing. All that stuff that's in you will start coming out. If you can, exercise. I don't care if you just go outside and walk around the block 5 times a day. Just do whatever you can to find some way to get that out. If you can't get it out with somebody, find these other ways to get it out with you. Lock yourself in the room, dance like crazy. Nobody's watching. Find a way to get that out and let it work its way out of you. I don't care how it is. Just try to find somewhere to work it out of you, even if you're by yourself, because if you do let it stay within yourself, it's only going to tumble on you. It's only going to grind on you, and those thoughts are just going to keep building and building upon yourself. So whatever way it is, whether it's talking, physical, writing, whatever you got to do, if you got to walk out in the middle of a field where there's nobody around and you scream for 20 minutes, do that. I don't care. Just find a way to get it out of you so it doesn't stay in you and build. And then I would say, we live in this world now, especially with social media, and it's not just you young people, it's the older people too. We live in this world now where everything is supposed to look one way, and everyone's online fronting like everything's all good all the time, and everybody's online. Like, look, right now in this time of COVID, I don't care who, unless everybody ain't doing good. They're looking like they are, but everybody's got issues right now. And so don't try as hard as you can not to take that to heart. Don't look at somebody else as doing good and take that to heart compared to your situation. That might not even be the truth. And if it is, they probably had to go through something to get to where they are right now. So don't even worry about that. Just worry about trying to keep yourself, just trying to keep your energy up. And like I said, if you got to write, scream, dance, whatever it is to get that stuff out of you until you can find someone to talk to, do that. Don't be afraid to, if you have the gut to, don't be afraid to find someone and say, like, hey, I'm having some bad thoughts. I need to speak to a professional. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm saying that as being a 48-year-old black man who grew up in the time to where it's just now being accepted for black people to go talk to therapists. In my community for a long time, you just didn't do that. You didn't go talk to therapists. You didn't trust doctors. You didn't want no one to think you were crazy. And that
nobody's business.
Yeah, you got to let that go. If you feel like if you have the opportunity that someone can take you to someone to speak to professionally, man, handle it, do it, go. There's no shame at all. That's what that person is there for, to help you get through that. And if you can just do that to help keep your to try to help keep your mind straight, you'll be able to do anything else, as long as you can, just try to keep yourself pointed, and just try to keep yourself somehow pointed north. Just keep yourself pointed in the right direction, and just do whatever you got to do to keep grinding, and just do it honestly, and you'll be all right.
Ahmed, we've spent some time learning about you, your personal journey, learning about your activism, and learning about the fact that you're an artist in and of yourself. I mean, you have a podcast as well as a great show called We Are Listening. One thing we didn't talk about is you're also in the development office over at San Diego Repertory Theater Company. Describe what that means for a young person who's out there listening. What is development? What does that mean?
Sure. So fund development, and that's not just theater, that goes across a lot of different disciplines. Fund development is a department or the people who go out to secure funds, especially when you're operating a nonprofit. You need help. You need help from the community. You need help from the government, and they're usually in some type of social space. And so, what people in development do, and there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different cogs to it. I mostly, in my role here at the rep right now, I mostly work on the data side. So I mostly work at processing contributions, making sure the data is good. But it's basically to go out in the community and speak to potential donors who, that you can find that have an interest in your mission and, will help fund that mission. Will give part of the indisposable income that they have to help an organization continue on that mission, no matter what it is, and that includes not just individual donors, that includes, state, city entities. There are foundations that, they're there to help the arts. Like we grew up on Sesame Street because there are people who wanted to give money to help keep PBS running. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
This is not stuff that the government just outright supplies. Like we have to depend on the private sector to help keep some of these things moving. And so that's really, what my department mainly does. We're mainly the people who make an effort to, besides what people purchase from the theater, we're the ones who try to make an effort to really get out there and solicit funds from those who would like to partake in the mission and see something flower from it. And with that includes a lot. Like, that includes a lot of skill sets. That includes being able to talk to people. That includes, like, especially on my end, that includes having a little bit of IT knowledge, a little bit of software knowledge, having a little bit of a data mining mind. You have to have that a little bit because you're dealing with a lot of numbers, you're dealing with a lot of things. But then again, it is a people person job. It is a social engineering job because you do have to learn to talk to people. You have to learn to talk to people outside of your station. You have to learn to talk to people who are economically on a whole nother level than you. You have to learn the difference between what money means to you and what money means to them, and what money means to the city and what money means to the state, because it all means different things to different people, and it all operates differently depending on who those people are. So with that, I take time, I've taken time to really dive into understanding how all of the financial institutions of the United States work. So I take time to understand the stock market. I take time to understand the central banks. I take time to understand, even in this volatile time we are in right now, how the money moves, because the people who I'm talking to, we don't have the same type of money, so we don't have the same money problems. but I need to understand their money problems in order to be able to speak to them about what we're doing. I need to be able to understand the business of the performing arts and live performances. I need to be able to understand what's happening between SAG and between Equity. Like, these are things that, and all these things, again, are transferable. These are things that don't just stay here in theater. These are things that if you go to work for some other type of company in some other type of field, these are still things that transfer. This is still knowledge that transfers into other industries. So my thing is just always telling people, man, just look, if you work in the tool shop, try to make yourself as many tools as possible. Like, if you work around the blacksmith, try to make yourself as many tools and weapons as possible. You work by the blacksmith. You know what I'm saying? The metal's all right there. The blacksmith is right there. The kiln is right there. You're spending all your time next to the blacksmith in the shop. Make yourself some tools. You know what I mean? So that's why I would tell young people, is that no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing, learn everything about where you're at and what you're doing, and then take it with you as you move on to the next spot.
Man, we're over the hour. We have burned right through another hour here. I could go another half hour, but we like to keep it at right around the 60-minute mark.
For sure.
I just want to say, I want to go around because I want Ms. Hatfield and I want Dr. G to also say something to you as well. I just want to say from bottom of my heart that I'm glad that you were in studio with us today, because I have learned a great deal about you. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, and you could not have been a more perfect first guest for us, because you're just the first in this long line of conversations that we're going to have around access and inclusion. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, you know what, Richard, thank you for extending the opportunity. I like when you first reached out to me, like I told you, I said, I don't know, man, I'm kind of a boring dude. I usually get people to talk to me.
No.
I usually try to ask other people questions, but I thank you guys for bringing me on. I do. I really appreciate it. And like I said, my goal, my being right now is to try to figure out how we get young people to transfer into this undefined future that we're stepping in, not just due to COVID. I mean, just this undefined future as we step into this new world of technology and data and things changing exponentially. Like, it just seems like every week I don't know what kids are going to be doing 10 years from now. I really don't have any idea. As I'm studying the trends of technology, I don't know what things are going to look like in 15 years. Something could come up in 2 years and completely change the game of our existence and how we do things. So I think that's just what I'm trying to work for, is just to try to get young people just to keep their minds open to all the possibilities in front of them.
That's awesome, man. Ms. Hatfield, any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to say you're an inspiration, and you might not see yourself that way, but you are, because your story is very powerful and anybody can connect to it because of the things that you have gone through in your life. And hopefully, if our students are watching, they can glean some things off of what you said and apply it to their own lives and start making some new choices and new decisions for themselves moving forward. So thank you for your time. Thank you for meeting with us and talking to us. It's been very powerful.
For sure.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that, thank you for sharing your story, because I think in the last 76 minutes or 67 minutes, we've touched on a myriad of areas and different bits and pieces of your life. And if our kids were listening, I'm sure they heard something that will help focus them positively in a direction that is going to pay off for them in the long run. So even I resonated with your story. So I appreciate you, man. I thank you for coming on and sharing your story and telling us about We Are Listening. And for one, I'm going to go back and listen to your some of those guests you named, man, they sound incredible. So thank you for sharing, man.
We're going to go down that list for sure. We're going to be reaching out to those folks. Hey, I just want to acknowledge a couple of students that are out there that are listening. JL, she's going to rewatch the stream again later, because she obviously enjoyed it, got so much out of it. She wants to go watch the whole thing all over again. JL, thanks for being out there this evening. AV Tenor sent us out some shout outs as well. I'm glad you guys were all out there. And hey, I just want to give a shout out to Vaughn Rainwater from San Diego Repertory Theater, who is out there. I saw him in the chat this evening. Vaughn, thanks for joining us, man.
My fellow development partner right there.
Absolutely, man. He's another great dude. You know what? I might need Vaughn. I might need to bring you on.
I need to bring Vaughn on, man.
I think I will, man. We'll have that conversation. Hey, listen, to all of you that were listening out there, thanks so much for tuning in to the Salon series. Any of our Salon series that you've missed, you can go back through our archive at sdscpamainstage.com, and you can rewatch those, and you'll be able to rewatch this one as well. So from all of us here at San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts, and thanks to our support from the Friends of SCPA, we're wishing you all a pleasant evening. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Oh my God.